Today I'm going to be showing you how to make fried shrimp just like the one sold at the Chinese restaurant. But first, let's start with the ingredients that we're going to need. What we first need is half a pound of large shrimp. For this we need half a teaspoon of chicken bouillon powder, 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground black pepper, and half a teaspoon of MSG. To make the batter, we need half a cup of very cold water, half a cup of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. We also gonna need about half a cup more of all-purpose flour. First, let's talk about the shrimp. Here, I'm using about half a pound of the super colossal sized shrimp. Half a pound of these shrimp are about 7 shrimps. This is the size that comes after the jumbo shrimp. They are quite large, almost as big as my hand. And it is important to mention that the shrimp must be raw. You cannot use cooked shrimp for this. The first thing we're going to do is clean and peel the shrimp. In my case, this part is going to be easier because the shrimp I bought already have the veins removed and the shell is already open, so it is really easy to peel the shrimp. The shrimp package will say something like easy peeled and cleaned and deveined, which means it's already peeled and it's already cleaned, but not completely peeled. It's only going to be cut on the top, but the shell comes off really easily. Now, if you find that your shrimp is a little slippery, simply run it under cold water to remove that kind of slime they bring. This is going to help you to remove the shell really easily. The most important thing when you peel a shrimp is to be careful with the tail, at least for this recipe. Usually, the top part comes off pretty easily, but the back end is more difficult and the shell tends to be harder to crack. Now, you could leave that little hard little edge in the back, but you'll still have plenty of meat inside. That's why I prefer to remove it carefully. What you have to do is squeeze the tail tightly while you peel it off so it won't come off when you remove the shell. And you're going to repeat this process with all the shrimp. Now, if for some reason you can't get the shrimp as big as this one, you could use smaller ones. The process will be the same except they'll be smaller. Look, here I'll show you a close-up on how to remove the skin. You have to be very careful because the shrimp meat is very tender and can easily split while you peel it. But this is only until you get the hang of it, and then you'll peel them very quickly. What you could do if you're having a hard time peeling the shrimp is to put them in the freezer for a little while, or at least for 5 minutes. This will make them harder and the shell will split more easily as it begins to freeze. Now, don't throw away that shell you removed from the shrimp because with this, you can make a broth. What I like to do is to freeze it until I'm ready to use. Now we're going to open the shrimp. But first, we need to make 3 cuts on the inside of each shrimp. You want to make these 3 cuts until they reach a little above the middle of the shrimp. This will help us eliminate the curvature that the shrimp has. This will let us flatten the shrimp without breaking it. And then we'll open it, but we'll open it from the top side, the side where they already opened if you bought them the vein. Then we lay the shrimp on its side and we press down on it while we slowly open it with a small knife. Try to not insert the knife too deep so you don't pierce the meat. What I do first is I make a small cut and then I go back over the cut, inserting the knife a little deeper each time. Then I turn the shrimp over and gently squash it with my hands. And that's how it looks. And you'll repeat this process until you open all the shrimp. Now, depending on where you're from and what Chinese restaurants you go to, fried shrimp tend to be a little rounder and larger. The reason for this is because they flatten the meat and the shrimp looks bigger. At least this is how it is in Puerto Rico. I don't know in other places. Now, I tried so many times to try to do it this way, but every time I try to flatten the meat more and more, it breaks. But you could give it a try and see if it works for you. Now, what happens if one of your shrimp tail breaks? Well, that's fine. Nothing is going to happen. This is just for aesthetic purposes and to hold it. So don't worry. If one of your shrimp tails break, you'll cut it the same way. While you're cutting up the shrimp, you'll notice that it has a little blue vein on the inside. And you don't need to remove that vein if you bought the shrimp cleaned and deveined. So don't worry. Your shrimp are clean. But of course, if you see any dirt, you could remove it with the knife. This process of cutting the shrimp can take you about 10 minutes. And this is the good part about buying the shrimp already clean and deveined, because the process will be much easier because it's already cleaned. After we finish all of this process with all the shrimp, we have to season the shrimp. For this, I use salt, black pepper, chicken bouillon, and MSG. It seems a little strange to add chicken bouillon to a seafood recipe, but you just have to trust the process because it really gives the recipe a delicious flavor. And together with the MSG, it adds that little Chinese flavor, which is what we're looking for. Now, if you're one of the few people who doesn't consume MSG, then simply you could leave it out. But this is really truly an essential part of the flavor that we're looking for, just like in the restaurants. Here, we have to make sure we distribute the seasoning evenly among the shrimp so that one doesn't end up with seasoning and others without. In the video, I didn't add it because I didn't have any, but when I do, I like to add 1/4 of a teaspoon of sesame oil because it gives it a super rich flavor. Next, we need a big plate, and then we'll pour that extra 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. Now we'll coat all the shrimp in the flour until they're completely coated. The most important thing here is to remove any excess flour after coating them. Remember, this is not the final coating. The only reason why we do this is so the final coating sticks well and doesn't fall off while frying. You're going to repeat the same process with all the shrimp until you're done. To make the coating, I use a mixture of all-purpose flour, cornstarch, and baking powder. This is because using only all-purpose flour won't give us the result we want. The cornstarch in the batter is what helps the batter be crispy, and the baking powder is what makes it expand like a little balloon. And the best thing about this coating mixture is that it could be used with other meats. I love coating chicken strips with this mixture, and it's so good. Then in a bowl, you want to mix the flour, the cornstarch, and the baking powder. Then you want to gradually add the water. The water should be ice cold because this will make the batter crispier. What I suggest is leaving the water in the freezer to be cold until we're ready to use it. The breading mixture should be thinner than the pancake batter. It should look watery but still firm, if that makes sense. Next, in a large frying pan, we'll add about 3 to 4 cups of oil over medium-high heat. The amount of oil will depend on the size of your pan. The only important thing here is that the shrimp don't touch the bottom of the pan because they tend to burn or at least get darker in color when you shallow fry them. Now we need to dip each shrimp in the mixture until they are completely coated. Before adding them to the pan, make sure you remove any excess mixture off of the plate and then fry them. As soon as you add the shrimp to the frying pan, you'll notice how quickly the coating expands and the shrimp will begin to float. Make sure you don't fry too many shrimps at the same time because they'll stick together. You'll need to fry them approximately 2 minutes per side or until they have a light golden color. Now remember that you're making this fried shrimp recipe the way we do in the Chinese restaurants in the island, at least in Puerto Rico. They usually fry them twice. The first one is just to cook the coating and then is fried a second time, 1 to warm it up and 2 to crisp it up and serve it nice and hot. And you see, this is the best part about this recipe because you could also make them in advance and fry them later. Then you just have to cool them completely and store them in the refrigerator for up to 3 days in an airtight container. Or even better, you could freeze them until you're ready to fry them. Just make sure you thaw them a little bit before refrying the shrimp. And those shrimp will be delicious, just like the ones on the restaurants, or even better because they're gonna be fresh and hot. These shrimps are so delicious that you could eat them alone as a snack, but you could also make them with a nice fried rice or even some tostones like we do in Puerto Rico. And look how delicious those shrimp look. The inside of the batter is very spongy and thin, and on the outside is very crispy, and the shrimp has that Chinese restaurant flavor, that umami taste, which is exactly what we're looking for. Remember that the link to this recipe and all of the ones I mentioned before are gonna be in the description below. Buen provecho and thanks for watching.